Maria Santos woke before sunrise, as she tended to do most mornings. A soft glow filled her small bedroom, the pale light slipping through thin curtains that fluttered with the faintest breeze. She reached over to the nightstand, where a simple wooden clock ticked softly. Time read 5:15. Outside, the quiet streets of Cedarville lay still, waiting for the day's bustle to begin. Maria slid her feet into worn slippers and slipped on a light robe, careful not to wake her husband, who lay peacefully beside her. She paused for a moment, breathing in the calm before the day's work. In the kitchen, Maria moved with practiced grace. She filled a kettle with water and set it on the stove, the metal whistling gently as it heated. While she waited, she arranged fresh biscuits on a small plate, placing them next to a tin of coffee she had brought from her favorite local roastery. Every detail mattered. She wanted the simple pleasures she offered at the shelter to reflect genuine care. She measured the coffee grounds by scoops, carefully pouring hot water over them as the kettle sang its final song. The rich aroma filled the air, blending with the faint scent of biscuits. By 6 o'clock, Maria was ready to leave. She gathered her things, a brown satchel containing notebooks, pens, and small gifts, handwritten notes of encouragement she planned to share. Her husband Javier stirred as she dipped into his cheek for a gentle kiss. "Have a good day," he whispered, sleep still soft in his voice. Maria smiled and stepped outside. The morning air felt crisp and clean. She locked the front door and walked down the narrow sidewalk toward her car, nodding in greeting to Mr. Lawson, the mailman, who waved from his truck. The shelter lay just a few blocks away. It's painted in pastel yellow with white trim, its brick walls seemed to glow in the dawn light. A small garden bloomed at its entrance, pansies, marigolds, and zinnias Maria had helped plant last summer. She parked and hurried inside, pushing open heavy double doors that creaked softly. Inside, the hall smelled of freshly cleaned floors and faint lavender from the diffuser in the corner. A few residents had already gathered in the dining area. They'd worked on puzzles or read newspapers under the gentle hum of a ceiling fan. "Good morning, everyone," Maria called, her voice warm and steady. Heads turned and smiles blossomed like flowers. Mrs. Lee, sitting by the window, raised her hand slowly. "Good morning, Governor," she said with a playful tone, as if reminding Maria of her title. Maria waved off the formality. "Call me Maria," she replied, smiling as she set down the biscuits on the long table. She placed coffee cups in neat rows and offered the pot to Mr. Thompson, who sat hunched in his wheelchair. "Mr. Thompson, would you like a refill?" He adjusted his glasses, peered at her, and nodded. "Thank you, Maria. You always bring the best beans," he smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. Maria chuckled softly and filled his cup. Nearby, a group gathered around Mrs. Patel, who was working on a piece of knitting. Maria took a seat and watched for a moment, admiring the busy hands and quiet focus. "How is the scarf coming along?" she asked. Mrs. Patel's eyes lit up. "Almost done. I'll give it to my granddaughter next week." Maria nodded. "She's lucky too. Have you?" Conversation flowed easily. Maria moved from table to table, listening to each story. She encouraged Mr. Diaz as he recounted a childhood memory of flying kites by the river. She congratulated Ms. Owens on her granddaughter's graduation. She poured a second cup of coffee for Mr. Lawson, who joked that he might retire soon but would miss their weekly chats. At each turn, Maria offered kindness and attentive ear, a few words of encouragement and genuine interest. As the clock ticked toward 7:30, more residents arrived. Some shuffled in with the help of staff, others used walkers or canes. Maria greeted them all by name. She paused at the back of the room, where Mrs. Nguyen sat on her own, reading a book about wildflowers. Maria leaned down gently. "May I join you?" she asked. Mrs. Nguyen smiled shyly. "Of course." Maria sat quietly, watching her read. "Those are beautiful lilies on the cover," she observed. Mrs. Nguyen nodded. "My husband loved lilies," she said softly. Maria offered a tissue. "Tell me about him, if you like." And for a few minutes, the two women shared memories of love and loss, creating a gentle tapestry of words that filled the room with warmth. By 8 o'clock, the last visitor had settled in. Maria rose and addressed the group. "Thank you all for letting me spend this morning with you," she said, her voice carrying calm authority. "Your stories inspire me every day." She paused to let her words sink in, looking around at faces lined with age and wisdom. A hush fell over the room, a respectful silence that spoke volumes. Then, one by one, residents applauded softly. Maria bowed her head in thanks, her heart full. She said her goodbyes and stepped back into the corridors. The staff greeted her with bright smiles and thanked her for the treats. Maria promised to return next week with fresh pastries. She walked out to her car, feeling uplifted. The shelter's walls faded into the distance as she drove toward the next stop on her schedule, a town hall meeting at the community center. She thought about the faces she had seen and the stories she had heard. Each life held a lesson, a memory, a piece of Cedarville's heart. Meanwhile, at the Cedarville precinct, Sergeant Dalton and his fellow officers were beginning their shift. Their headquarters stood across town in a simple brick building with barred windows. Inside, the bullpen was alive with chatter and the clacking of keyboards. Dalton pushed back from his desk and stretched, wincing as his muscles protested. Ow. He looked around at his team. Officer Green, whose loud laugh filled the room, Officer Patel, who typed rapidly, and Officer Lee, who polished his badge. "Ready for another day keeping Cedarville safe?" Dalton asked, leaning against a cubicle wall. Green chuckled.
Always.
"But first, we need coffee stronger than our morning drill." Patel rolled her eyes. "You're always joking. We have real work to do today." Lee grinned.
It means
"We have to watch the governor's schedule again. She's visiting more places. I heard she's meeting with hikers at Mount Ridge." Dalton nodded. "Yep, we pulled her over last week on that back road. She was so calm I almost forgot she was a governor. She just smiled and thanked us." He smirked. It was like giving cookies to a kindergartner. Green slapped his back. "She's too soft for these guys. People expect cops to be tough." A murmur of agreement rose among the officers. They tapped their badges proudly and exchanged jokes about the governor's charity tours. Patel frowned but said nothing. She respected Maria Santos and thought these jokes were in poor taste. But she stayed silent, not wanting to cause friction. Dalton folded his arms and surveyed the room. "All right, team. We've got traffic patrol on Route 9, then that checkpoint on Maple Road. Let's move out."
Ow.
They gathered their gear radios. Flashlights, notebooks, and headed toward the parking lot. As they left, their laughter trailed behind them. They spoke of the governor's gentle ways and how different it was from the usual forceful approach they valued. Dalton shook his head as they climbed into their squad cars. "I don't get it," he said aloud. "Why would a leader choose coffee and biscuits over strict laws? It's all soft talk." His partner laughed. "Maybe she thinks kindness will fix everything." Up on the hill, the sun climbed higher, painting the sky in pale blue. Maria Santos's car became a small dot on the road as she drove on to her next appointment. Down below, Sergeant Dalton and his team sped away, sirens off and engines humming. Neither side imagined how the day's events would soon turn their quiet morning into a story Cedarville would never forget. The sun had climbed higher in the sky by mid-afternoon as Governor Maria Santos drove along the winding back road that led to the flood repair site. The recent rains had swollen the riverbanks, and crews were fixing washed-out shoulders and clearing debris. Maria's car followed the curve of the road, its tires humming against the asphalt. She leaned forward, scanning the fields of corn that stretched on either side, their green stalks whispering in the light breeze. Even with her busy schedule, she found a quiet comfort in these open spaces. She slowed as she approached a small Polia checkpoint. 2 patrol cars sat parked at an angle, their lights off, but their presence clear. An orange traffic cone marked the spot where drivers should halt. Maria eased her foot off the accelerator and rolled to a stop. Her dark hair caught the sunlight as she glanced in her rearview mirror to check her neat blazer and simple blouse. She adjusted the seatbelt, then took a breath and opened her window. Sergeant Dalton stood beside her car, his arms folded across. His chest, His uniform looked crisp and new. He wore mirrored sunglasses that hid his eyes, and his jaw jutted forward as he examined the governor's license plate. His two partners, officers Green and Lee, leaned against the hoods of their cars. They exchanged smirks and leaned in toward Dalton, waiting for his signal. Dalton walked to Maria's window with a slow, measured step. He tapped on the glass, and she lowered it. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said. His tone was polite, but his eyes held a spark of amusement. "Routine check. License and registration, please." Maria reached into her satchel on the passenger seat and smiled gently. "Good afternoon, Sergeant, of course." She handed him her documents. Her voice was calm and friendly. She watched as he studied them. Behind him, Officer Lee nudged Green lightly and muttered under his breath, so loudly that Maria caught the words, "Here comes our biscuit queen." Green snickered, and Lee covered his mouth to hide his grin. Maria kept her smile steady. She had learned over the years not to let sharp words wound her. She had faced tougher crowds than this. Still, a small cloud passed over her mood. She reminded herself that these men were doing their jobs. She would remain courteous. Dalton drummed his fingers on the steering wheel of Maria's car, pretending to examine the papers. "Nice roads this time of year," he said, looking up at her. His question sounded innocent, but the way his lips curled made her heart sink a little. "You must enjoy the views." Maria's eyes flicked to the field beside them. "Yes, it's quite beautiful," she replied. "These roads need repair after the floods. I'm on my way to inspect the work. The crews have done good progress, but there's still more to do." Dalton raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping low so officers Green and Lee could hear. "You just travel around handing out cookies and smiles. You really think that helps fix roads?" Green laughed quietly. Lee let out a snort. Maria felt a flicker of heat on her cheeks. She met Dalton's gaze and kept her voice steady. Kindness and conversation build trust. When people trust their leaders, they work together more smoothly. Then we can fix roads faster. She paused. And biscuits are just a small way to say thank you. At his side, Lee let out a loud guffaw. "Thank you." "More like a photo op," he said, loud enough for several passing drivers to glance over. Green's eyes danced as he added, "Yeah, a picture with the governor and a big plate of biscuits. That'll cure everything." Maria closed her eyes for a moment and then opened them with renewed calm. She began to reach for her cup of water. "I believe every gesture counts," she said softly. "Small things can make a big difference." In someone's day, she offered the bottle to Dalton. "Would you like a drink?" "It's just water." Dalton looked surprised by her offer. He glanced at his partners, whose laughter had died down into uneasy snickers. "No thank you, ma'am," he said, waving his hand. He shoved the papers back through the window. "All right. Free to go." Before she could say another word, Lee pressed a button on his radio and triggered the patrol car's siren. A short burst of sound that startled Maria. She flinched and her water bottle clattered against the armrest. The sudden noise echoed through the quiet road. Drivers behind her caught the commotion and braked, watching in confusion. Maria raised her hand to silence the men. "Please," he said, "I could go," she reminded them, voice firm but polite. She started to roll up her window. As she did, the officers leaned in and whispered more insults, their words carried by the opening. Something about soft-hearted governor, wasting police time, and next, she'll bring cupcakes to a bank robbery. Maria's window slid shut. The click echoed. Silence came at once. She sat still for a moment, feeling the hum of the engine beneath her, the tension of their mocking words hanging in the air. She let out a quiet breath and placed her hands on the steering wheel. She prayed the rest of her journey would be without incident. She drove on, the checkpoint. Receding behind her, golden fields lined the road, and a lone hawk circled above. She allowed herself a thought. These men needed guidance more than punishment. She understood that people sometimes mocked what they did not fully grasp. Show respect and gratitude, even to those who seemed to scorn her. A mile farther on, she passed a farm stand, stacked high with fresh tomatoes and green beans. She slowed enough to wave at a young couple unloading baskets. They waved back eagerly, calling out greetings. Their joy warmed her heart, a reminder of the good that connection could bring. She pressed the accelerator and continued toward the bridge where workers in hard hats directed dump trucks and wheelbarrows. As she arrived, a foreman greeted her with a hearty wave. She parked beside a pile of steel beams and climbed out. The cool air shifted around her, carrying the tang of wet cement and fresh earth. Maria donned a safety vest and helmet, moving. With an attentive eye, she asked questions about erosion barriers and drainage channels. Her presence lifted the spirits of the crew, and they chatted freely, pointing out challenges and solutions. Moments earlier, the mocking at the checkpoint felt distant. Here she was their leader and their partner. Her genuine interest in their work made them relax and share ideas. She wrote notes in her pad, thanked each worker with a firm handshake, and offered cold bottled water. When she walked away, the crew cheered and waved. Back in her car, she unclipped the helmet and vest and tucked them into her satchel. She pressed the starter and drove on toward the next stop. In the rearview mirror, the checkpoint blended into the roadside scenery. She carried no anger, only a commitment to understanding and respect. As the miles passed, she thought of ways to build better relations with the local officers, perhaps a joint community picnic or a meeting over coffee where they could share stories and concerns. Inside the squad cars at the checkpoint, the mood had shifted. Officers Green and Lee sat in stunned silence as Dalton frowned at his radio. "Why did we have to push her buttons?" Green finally asked, looking away. Lee ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know," he said. "It felt wrong." Dalton's shoulders slumped. She didn't deserve that. We let jokes go too far. He turned on his partner. "What if that was the wife of someone you loved? Would you mock her then?" The question hung heavy in the air. They sat quietly, listening to the birds and the rustle of the corn. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Their radios crackled with routine calls, but none of them sounded right. They packed up the cones and signs and turned off their lights. As they loaded into the cars, Dalton said, "Let's finish our shift. But next time, we remember that behind every title is a person." Green nodded slowly. Lee reached for the siren switch, but left it off. On the back road, Governor Santos's car wound through the fields, pursuing a path of service and connection. She carried with her no bitterness, only a gentle resolve to bridge gaps and build understanding one kind gesture at a time. ChatGPT said. Mr. Ahmed unlocked the door to his small convenience store. Just as the sun began its slow climb over Cedarville's rooftops, he flipped the sign from closed to open and switched on the old ceiling fan. The hum of the blades stirred the cool morning air. Inside, rows of canned goods, bottled drinks, and household items lined the shelves. Mr. Ahmed had owned this shop for nearly 20 years. Every morning he greeted familiar faces, the postal carrier, the jogger cutting through on her route, the late shift worker stopping by for tea. Today, though, his attention was elsewhere. He had seen something yesterday that he could not forget. As he stocked shelves near the front window, he recalled the scene at the checkpoint. He had been closing his shop next evening when he noticed the governor's car pulled over. He stepped outside, curious. The officers barked orders, and he saw Maria Santos offer her documents with her usual calm smile. Then he heard the mocking. Words, cruel jokes about cookies and photo ops. His chest tightened. He snapped a quick video on his old smartphone. He aimed the lens at the governor's window and recorded the tense exchange, zooming just enough to catch the officers' faces without being noticed. He felt a rush of conflict. He did not want trouble, only fairness. After stalking and sweeping, he moved behind the counter and tapped his phone screen, reviewed the clip, watching the cold smirks on Dalton's face and Maria's patient composure. He felt a knot in his stomach. The governor had served his community with warmth and respect. He deserved better. Mr. Ahmed decided to share the video with his neighbors. He opened his social media app and found the local Cedarville community group. Hundreds of residents belonged there, people who watched out for one another, posted lost dog notices, or planned the annual harvest festival. He typed a quick message, "Please watch this. our governor treated like this at a police stop. Does this look right to you? Then he attached the video. Within minutes, notifications popped on his screen, comments streamed in. Some people expressed shock. One neighbor, Mrs. Brooks, wrote that she had seen the governor's biscuit visits and felt they brought comfort to lonely seniors. Mr. Ahmed smiled at that memory. Another commenter, Mr. Lopez, said, "I respect the police, but this crosses a line." A few voices defended the officers, arguing it was a routine stop and the governor must follow rules like anyone else. Mr. Ahmed read each reply carefully, responding with calm words. "I support our officers, but respect should go both ways." Slowly, the group's mood shifted. The video was shared 50 times in an hour. The next notification was different. A local news reporter had reached out. She asked for Mr. Ahmed's permission to use the clip on their evening broadcast. He hesitated, then agreed, trusting that the story needed to be told. Later that afternoon, Cedarville News ran the short segment. The footage showed the mocking remarks and highlighted Maria's gentle responses. The anchor's voice spoke of public servants treating other public servants with dignity. Across town, people paused in their daily routines to watch the report. In the town square, a group of bank workers huddled around a small TV there, coffee mugs in hand, whispering in disbelief. Meanwhile, Sergeant Dalton arrived at the precinct for his afternoon shift. He flicked on the television in the break room. The news anchor's voice drifted through the room. First, Dalton thought it was about the flood repairs. Then he recognized the checkpoint scene. His heart sank. The clip showed him and his partner laughing. His face felt hot beneath his uniform. The room grew silent as other officers watched too. Green turned away, his expression uneasy. Patel covered her mouth, her eyes wide with concern. Only Lee sat unmoving, his gaze fixed on the screen. After the report ended, an internal memo buzzed into their inboxes. The chief of police called for an explanation and announced an immediate review. Lines of text scrolled across the screen. Respectful conduct required at all times. All officers under review. Public relations briefing scheduled. Dalton felt his stomach twist. He had never imagined that his careless words would reach so many. He sensed the trust he and his team had built with the community slipping away. At the governor's residence, Maria was finishing her paperwork when her phone buzzed. She saw dozens of missed calls and messages. Some were kind residents thanking her for her composure. Others came from state officials asking about the incident. She read a message from the informal sheriff liaison. "We're reviewing the matter. You handled yourself with grace." Maria's chest warmed with relief. She did not seek conflict, but she knew respect was essential. She drafted a brief statement. "I appreciate the support and understanding of Cedarville. I trust our law enforcement to serve with respect. Together, we can learn and grow." She sent it to her press team and leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. Across Cedarville, residents debated the event. In the grocery store checkout line, a mother whispered to her daughter, "Always treat people with kindness, no matter their rank." At the senior center, Mrs. Lee recounted the moment with tears in her eyes. She stayed calm even when they ridiculed her. Volunteers at the shelter decided to bake extra biscuits for the police station as a gesture of goodwill. They planned to deliver them next week. Small acts multiplied, echoing Maria's belief in kindness. In a quiet corner of the precinct, Dalton sat with his superior. The walls were lined with certificates of service. The chief spoke in measured tones. "Sergeant, we value your dedication, but respect is crucial. Your actions were unprofessional. We will hold a workshop on community relations. You and your team will attend." Dalton nodded, swallowing his pride. "Yes, Chief, I understand." As he left the office, he glanced at a poster on the wall. "Serve with honor and respect." He pressed his hand against it, promising himself to live up to those words. That evening, Mr. Ahmed closed his shop and locked the door. He walked home under a sky streaked with pink and purple hues. He thought about the power of one simple video and one small act of sharing. He felt proud that he had used his voice for fairness. When he entered his modest apartment, his daughter ran to greet him. She hugged him tightly and whispered, "Dad, you did the right thing." He smiled, tousling her hair. "We all deserve respect," he said. "I just helped. Remind people of that." As darkness settled over Cedarville, lights glimmered in windows. Inside the governor's home, Maria and Javier sat at the table, sharing a quiet dinner. She recounted the day's events, her voice calm but hopeful. Javier reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You showed how leadership works," he said. "You turned something negative into a lesson in kindness." Maria nodded, smiling.
Oh.
It's a reminder that respect and understanding can heal divides. On the outskirts of town, the officers emerged from their community relations workshop. They had spent the afternoon listening to stories of residents and learning about empathy. Green and Lee exchanged looks, both changed by the experience. Dalton took a slow breath and said, "Let's start fresh tomorrow." His team nodded in agreement. And so, Cedarville settled into a new balance. A video had shown the world what humility and mockery looked like side by side. It had sparked reflection, conversation, and change. The governor's gentle leadership had guided the town through discomfort and toward unity. Mr. Ahmed's simple act of sharing had reminded everyone that respect could be demanded and given by ordinary people. In the quiet streets and busy shops, Cedarville learned that kindness echoed far beyond a single moment, shaping the heart of a community. The next morning, Cedarville awoke under a pale sunrise that painted the sky in soft pinks and golds. Cars rolled along Main Street and shopkeepers unlocked their doors. But inside the Cedarville precinct, the usual calm of an early shift vanished in a single moment. Sergeant Dalton's radio crackled with an urgent beep as his phone lit up on the desk. He picked it up and stared at the screen. "Miss Harper, reporter, wants comment." The caller ID read. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed again. This time it was the mayor's office. Then another call came in from the state police liaison. His desk vibrated under the weight of unseen hands pressing the device, demanding attention. Dalton let out a low sigh and tapped the screen too. Silence the first call. He set the phone face down and leaned back in his chair. Across the room, Officer Green's station erupted with similar chaos. His phone flashed red with unanswered calls. Lee, standing at the coffee machine, spilled a drop of his mug onto the counter as his phone rang in his pocket. The precinct's main line rang without stopping. Soft chime echoed through the hall, then another. It felt like a storm of sound, each ring a small hammer driving home the same message. They had stirred the town with their actions. Dalton rose and pressed a button on the intercom system. "All units meet in the briefing room in 5 minutes," he announced. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. Officers exchanged puzzled glances and hurried to gather. Some slipped off their holsters, others folded notebooks under their arms. Patel arrived last, her face pale but determined. "What's happening?" Green asked, lowering his voice. Patel shook her head. "Calls from above," she said. "Everyone wants answers." In the briefing room, chairs sat in neat rows. A large whiteboard hung on the wall, empty for now. Dalton stood at the front. His shoulders squared. Green, Patel, Lee, and 2 other junior officers filled the seats. The air felt thick, charged by the tension of the morning. He cleared his throat. "Good morning," he began, though it hardly felt good. "I know you're all getting calls." "I am too. The video circulated last night, and now our phones are flooded." Lee rubbed his forehead. "I didn't think it would go that far," he admitted. "It was a joke." He looked at Dalton, his eyes pleading. "I didn't mean harm." Green nodded. "Same here." The junior officers perched on the edge of their seats. "Sir, the chief wants a full report by noon," one said. "And the mayor's asking why we treated the governor that way." Patel spoke up. "We need to be honest and accountable," she said softly. "We can't dodge this." Dalton nodded slowly. "We will be honest," he declared. He glanced at each face. "We'll tell the truth. We'll apologize. Then we'll learn from this." He paused. "But first, we need to answer the phones." "Officer Green, take the calls from the news outlets. Lee, you handled the mayor's office and the state liaison. Patel, you gather our notes and write the incident report. I'll meet with Chief Harper in 20 minutes. The officers rose. and left the room, trading nervous looks but moving with purpose. Back at Green's desk, the lines of callers formed an invisible queue. He answered the first call. "This is Officer Green, Cedarville Precinct. How can I help you?" On the other end, a reporter's voice asked for details, context, and a quote. Green took a deep breath, then spoke with as much calm as he could muster. "Officers involved have expressed regret. We did not intend disrespect. We apologize. To Governor Santos." He kept his tone respectful, mindful of every word. As soon as he hung up, his phone rang again. He pressed the green button without hesitation. Meanwhile, Lee approached the mayor's line. The mayor's assistant asked for an immediate statement. Lee's heart pounded. He stammered at first, then found his words. "We recognize our mistake. We're committed to serving with respect and honor. We welcome any guidance the mayor's office can provide." He exhaled slowly, feeling some weight lift as he spoke the apology. At her station, Patel opened her notebook. She listed each detail: time, place, participants, words spoken, actions taken. She described the governor's calm demeanor, the officer's mocking tone, and the moment the governor drove away, she attached the body camera log and dash cam screenshots. She crafted an incident report that blended facts with an apology note. "We acknowledge our unprofessional conduct and pledge to learn and grow from this event." She saved the document and emailed it to Dalton and the chief. The briefing room door behind him and headed to Chief Harper's office. The hallway felt quieter now, as if the precinct held its breath. He knocked gently and entered. The chief sat behind a large oak desk, his face lined by years of service. He motioned for Dalton to sit. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting long shadows across certificates on the wall. "Sergeant Dalton," the chief began, his voice calm but firm. "I've read the report. I've seen the footage. You and your team made a serious error." Dalton nodded. "Yes, sir. We did not uphold the respect required. We acknowledge that." The chief leaned back. "I appreciate your honesty. Public trust is fragile. We will offer to host community listening sessions, and your team will participate. You will also attend an ethics and respect workshop." He paused. "Most importantly, you must rebuild that trust through your actions every day." Dalton felt relief that the chief spoke of steps forward rather than punishment alone. He met the chief's gaze. "We will do whatever it takes, sir." The chief's expression softened slightly. "Good. Now let's prepare our public statement. I want it out today." On the other side of town, Governor Santos sat at her desk in the State House. Her phone had made a gentle hum all morning, but she let most messages wait. She read notes from her staff, approving small changes in the community relations plan. Then her press aide knocked and entered with a draft statement for her review. The governor scanned the words, an acknowledgement of the incident, expressions of respect for the police, and an invitation to dialogue. She smiled softly and signed the statement with a calm flourish. Soon the staff gathered around a monitor to watch the press conference live. Governor Santos stepped up to the podium before a row of microphones. Cameras clicked. Warm smile, radiating composure. "Good morning, everyone," she began. "Yesterday I experienced a routine traffic stop that became more than a test of my patience. I believe in the service of our police officers and the importance of public safety. At the same time, respect is a two-way street." She paused, letting her words sink in. A hush filled the hall. "To the officers involved, I offer my understanding and forgiveness. I trust they will learn from this, as I will continue to learn. From all of you, let us move forward together, working as partners to build a safer, kinder Cedarville." She stepped back and gave a small nod. Applause echoed softly. In the precinct's break room, Green and Lee watched the press conference on a small television. Tension eased from their shoulders as they listened. Patel sat beside them, her eyes shining with pride. "That was perfect," Green whispered. Lee offered a small smile. "We have to live by these words," he said. They nodded in agreement. Back in the community group online, comments blew up again, but this time the tone was hopeful. "Respect and forgiveness," one person wrote. "This is how we heal." Another said we need more leaders like her, Few commenters praised the precinct's quick apology. The mood shifted from outrage to unity. By midday, the phones had quieted. The pendulum swung from frenzy to a gentle hum of routine calls. Officers returned to their patrols, but now with a deeper sense of purpose. They stopped by the shelter where Governor Santos volunteered, offering polite waves and respectful greetings. The staff and residents welcomed them with surprise and smiles. Over biscuits and coffee, the officers listened to stories of forgiveness and service. They shared their own regrets and hopes to do better. At the end of his shift, Dalton stepped outside into the warm afternoon. He looked at the red brick precinct and took a slow breath. He thought of the overnight storm of calls, the town's reaction, and the governor's gracious words. He felt a new determination settle in his chest. He raised his head and walked toward his squad car, ready to serve again, this time with respect, humility, and the knowledge that every call, every gesture, and every word held real meaning for the people of Cedarville. A few days after the incident, Cedarville's community center buzzed with anticipation. The governor had invited local residents and police officers to a shared luncheon. Tables stood in neat rows under soft hanging lights, each draped in white cloth. Plates of fresh fruit, sandwiches, and pastries were arranged in generous spreads. A banner overhead read, "Together we serve," symbolizing unity. Maria Santos arrived early, carrying trays of her homemade lemonade. Her smile was genuine as she set the pitchers on each table and greeted arriving guests by name. The officers, including Sergeant Dalton, entered together, wearing civilian clothes to blend in. They carried boxes of cookies baked by shelter volunteers. Their expressions held a mix of nerves and determination. Everyone found seats, mixing in pairs of officers and elders, teenagers and shopkeepers. The room settled into a comfortable murmur of conversation as Maria rose to speak. Her voice was warm but carried a quiet authority. She thanked everyone for coming and spoke of the importance of listening to each other. She reminded the gathering that respect and trust grow when people share meals and stories. As she sat, the first plates were passed around. Conversations bloomed. An older man named Mr. Henderson asked Officer Lee about his family. Lee spoke openly of his children's school play, his tone humble and sincere. Across the room, Officer Green laughed with Miss Patel from the senior center, recalling her tips for growing roses in her garden. The air felt light and hopeful. At one table, Dalton sat next to Mrs. Nguyen, who had shared her memories of lilies. He listened intently as she described how her husband taught her to plant bulbs each spring. In return, Dalton spoke of his grandmother's love for gardening, admitting he never took the time to learn from her. Mrs. Nguyen's eyes softened, and she handed him a small packet of lily seeds. "Plant these in your garden," she said. "It will remind you of new beginnings." Dalton nodded, touched by her generosity. He slipped the packet into his pocket, feeling a sense of gratitude for the unexpected friendship. Meanwhile, in another corner, Mr. Ahmed stood beside Mayor Liu, recounting how a simple video had sparked a town-wide conversation about respect. The mayor nodded thoughtfully. "We must remember that every person we serve has dignity," he said. Mr. Ahmed smiled, adding, "And sometimes it takes a small act to remind us all." They raised their cups in a quiet toast. Nearby, a group of volunteers handed out flyers. For an upcoming community cleanup, officers and residents grabbed extra brochures, eager to work side by side. After lunch, Maria invited everyone to share reflections. One by one, people spoke. A teenage volunteer said she had learned that leaders are people who listen. A local shopkeeper admitted he now saw the police in a new light, understanding the challenges they faced. An officer confessed that he regretted mocking the governor and promised to treat every citizen with respect. Soft claps followed each speaker. Tears glistened in some eyes, but smiles shone brighter. The gathering felt like a tapestry of voices, woven together by mutual understanding. Later, music began to play softly, and some residents requested a dance. Officers joined in, guiding elderly partners across the floor. Laughter bubbled as awkward steps turned into graceful turns. Maria watched from the side, her heart light. She saw walls dissolve between uniforms and civilians. She remembered the tense moments at the checkpoint and marveled at how simple kindness had bridged the divide. The governor's dream of community. Harmony felt real in that dance hall. As the event wound down, tables emptied of plates and cups, but spirits remained full. Maria approached the officers one by one, thanking them for their willingness to heal and learn. To Sergeant Dalton, she said quietly, "Today shows what we can achieve when we choose respect." Dalton bowed his head. "Thank you for guiding us," he replied. "You showed us the power of calm leadership." They shook hands firmly. In the following weeks, Cedarville saw new partnerships. Officers volunteered at the senior shelter, serving lunches and listening to stories. Governor Santos joined patrol rides, learning patrol routes and community concerns firsthand. School visits included both law enforcement and government officials, speaking together on respect and civic responsibility. Traffic stops became more courteous. Officers greeted drivers with clear explanations and offered water bottles on hot days. Residents who once felt distant now greeted officers by name. Community events carried banners that read "Neighbors in Service," a phrase borrowed from Maria's earliest speeches. Behind the scenes, Dalton kept Mrs. Nugent's packet of lily seeds on his desk at home. Each morning, he planted a few bulbs in his small yard, tending them with care. He thought of new beginnings. In his patrol car, he tucked small cards with positive messages "You matter" and "Thank you too" hand out during stops. Officers adopted the practice, turning routine interactions into moments of encouragement. The ripple effect grew. One evening, as Maria drove through Cedarville's quiet streets, she spotted officers helping a stranded motorist change a flat tire. The scene warmed her heart. She parked nearby and stepped out to offer a cold drink. The motorist, a nervous young woman, looked relieved as she accepted the bottle. The officers waved, and Maria joined their friendly banter. In that moment, she knew the town had embraced a new spirit. Pride and humility walked hand in hand, shaping Cedarville's character. Months later, at the annual Cedarville Fair, Maria and Dalton sat side by side at the judges' table for a bake-off contest. They tasted pies and cakes, critiquing flavors together. The crowd cheered as they awarded ribbons. Their easy camaraderie spoke of trust rebuilt and respect earned. Children ran past with cotton candy, and lanterns glowed as twilight fell. The gentle hum of laughter and music, Cedarville celebrated more than fair prizes. They celebrated unity. That night, Maria returned home and sat on her front porch, gazing at the stars. She reflected on that first morning at the shelter, the mocking at the checkpoint, the flood repair visit, the viral video, the calls from above. Each moment had been a step on a journey toward deeper understanding. She felt gratitude for every person who chose kindness over scorn. In the quiet of her porch, she whispered a promise to keep listening, to keep leading with humility, and to remind Cedarville that respect begins with one simple act of empathy. Above her, the lanterns of the fair still glowed in the distance, a symbol of a community that learned how brightly it could shine when it chose to stand together.